Hello again out there in SNU land. This is Lee Copeland, Director of Talent and Business Growth at the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber, and also Alumni Board President, here with my friend James Wall, fellow SNU alumnus and job hunt and job placement guru. And I want him to introduce himself, and we're going to talk about some really practical ways for you to help leverage your job search. So James, I want you to introduce yourself, tell everybody what it is that you do, what you're good at, and how a resume might be an important part of looking for a job.
Hey team, thanks a lot, Lee. James Wall here, and I'm what's called a job search expert. You can call me a career coach, you can call me a career guru, and some people even call me the job whisperer. So, because I understand the market team and I've done a lot of research on this subject. So let's talk a little bit about resumes. So everybody seems to think resume is the number one thing that's going to help you get a job. Remember, your resume is truly, in its essence, a marketing tool. That's what it is. And never forget that. It's truly a marketing tool. Now, let's talk about some of the things to keep in mind about the resume. Don't worry about putting your picture on a resume. It depends on what it's for. Let me step back a little bit. If you're talking about photography, then yeah, maybe put your picture on a resume. But for just jobs that you want to be looking at, minus the picture. Last survey I read, it said 79% of resumes are rejected because they have a picture on it. And why is that? It's because everyone has a bias. Someone might not like your haircut, like the way you're dressed, like the color of your skin. It could be a lot of different things. So minus the picture, forget the picture. When you look at your email address, I know you probably attached to your email address, but Johnny Football Player 2020 is probably not going to be the best email address. Just use your name for your email address. When you start to think about what you want to put on your resume, don't think of it in terms of you writing your whole life story. Think of it in terms of what you want the employer or that hiring manager to know about you and what you bring to the table. And be specific. Don't be general. Don't say, I'm a hard worker. If you're a hard worker, then give me an example of how you're a hard worker. If you're committed, then give me an example of how you're committed. So your resume, maximum 1 to 2 pages. If you have a lot of experience, 2 pages. Less experience should only be 1. I've got a significant amount of experience. The longest resume I have is probably 10 pages long. And trust me, I can get it down to 1 page. So I know you can get yours down to 1 page.
James, a quick question for you about experience on a resume. Sometimes people just coming out of college don't have a lot of work experience. Is it a good idea for them to list all their job responsibilities at the jobs they've had? Or do they need to begin to think about what the functions that they actually accomplished in terms of imagining how that might fit with the company they're applying for? So that's part one. And then part two, for people that do have job experience that maybe have been displaced or are thinking about making a career change, do they list all the specifics of the jobs they've held, or do they need to, again, to kind of reimagine maybe what that would look like transferred into another location? Can you speak to those two?
Okay, so let's talk about the first one. So the first one, and you're right on point. You're right on point the way you're talking about this, because what we love to see is people focus on, you have to focus on what an employer wants. Because here's what I can tell you. If you can tell me everything that you do in 3 paragraphs, and really what the employer really wants to know is just 1 paragraph, then just tell them the 1 paragraph, minus the other parts of it. Now, let's say you're just getting out of school and you don't have a lot of work experience. You've probably done a lot of volunteer service somewhere. You've probably done, it doesn't have to be work experience. Experience is experience, and you want to put that down. And use those keywords to your advantage. Companies are saying certain things in the job description because those are the things that they're looking for. And you got to speak to those things.
So you're talking about articulating the skills that you've developed rather than necessarily the specific job title that you had or job function. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, that's really good news because sometimes when you're getting started, you don't know that you have enough skill or enough experience. And sometimes for folks that are trying to reimagine themselves or are trying to find a job that have lost a job, it's discouraging because they look at maybe a job application and say, well, I didn't do that job, or I don't have that exact experience. How do they, I think what I'm asking is, how do they then use that resume as a way to kind of reimagine what they could do as they begin
Okay.
to market themselves to a potential employer?
So Lee, here's a word that I want everybody to just look up and just absorb. It's called transferable skills. This is a huge thing now, transferable skills, because you hear all the time about people coming from one totally unrelated industry and being successful in a totally different industry because they used all of their transferable skills minus the skills that were focused in this industry to use in another industry.
Gotcha. Well, that's really good news because right now we know that people hold more and more kinds of jobs over the course of their time in the workforce. And so it's actually kind of encouraging that they could kind of continue to reimagine what they're learning and sort of leverage that into the next new thing, even if they haven't done it before.
Absolutely.
That is great news. Well, folks, we hope that that's a helpful way for you to begin to get started, leveraging your resume and your experience towards landing that next great job. So this is Lee and James checking in with you. We'll be back with a bit more conversation around the next topic of all things jobs, but we thank you for joining us.